Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this video blog special number 31. Full Disclosure produces short videos of topical issues on our website where we pose questions and invite our web visitors to add their comments to the discussion. We've assembled 3 of these controversial programs for our cable viewers here today in this video blog special. Our first video blog highlights another useless budget hearing led by a group of California politicians. These elected officials were trying to impress everybody that they were actually doing something about California's long overdue budget. Here in California, bond ratings are in the toilet, and the state can't pay its bills. Government employees are being laid off, and union employees are mobilizing their forces to prevent the raiding of their lucrative pension plans. The elected officials are between a rock and a hard place, so the elected officials have finally decided to take urgent action. What did they do? They called a hearing so that they could get together and talk to themselves and pretend like they were trying to solve the problem. Naturally, Full Disclosure was there. We're over here across the street from the Museum of Tolerance, where the Senate Select Committee and Assembly Committees just held a hearing on the subject of government reforms.
I think that what the committee really did up there was a dog and pony show. It's what I would call a dog and pony show.
They tried to prevent Full Disclosure from recording the hearing, but when KTLA showed up, they couldn't stop us without stopping them. So we got inside with our cameras. What did we get for our efforts? Hours of meaningless drivel.
Principles that I've come to realize.
In the instances where there were outcomes established, was there a change in the legislative and the political cultures? Because I at least am sensing, and maybe I'm just hopefully just too hopeful.
And I've been on budget committee before and in budget subcommittee hearings. I don't understand the issues I'm voting on. I mean, it's absurd.
The thing I would say here is that any fundamental change is going to incur resistance.
We are running a little long because we're having an important conversation.
They spent hours talking to themselves, and after an eternity of government babble, they allowed the people in the attendance only 15 minutes for public comment. But the public wasn't having any of that dog and pony show. Instead of discussing the mundane bureaucratic speak, the public gave the legislators a piece of their mind. It's government corruption. That's the problem in California, not the overtaxed public. Interestingly, the ire of the public focused on the courts.
Before we talk about taxes and budgets and those sort of things, let's talk about the corruption and the waste.
Our judicial system is the most corrupt judicial system in the nation, in Los Angeles, California. You need to know that.
The audience was aware of the jailed Mr. Richard Fine, who has sounded the clarion call identifying the illegal payments being made to the L.A. Superior Court judges.
Some of you up here, go talk to Mr. Fine in court, and let's solve our legal problem. And let's get rid of these illegally paid judges.
With regards to this particular hearing, when talking about government reform, oversight, and cost savings, I think I would agree with this gentleman here that the courts are really a place to look. I think we need additional oversight over the courts, which, with as much money as they get from our state budget.
You have no clue how uptight the voters are. There will be pitchforks taken out in June of 2010. I promise you.
I do agree with this gentleman about Richard Fine. He did uncover that there was double charging of extra legal benefits they were charging both the counties and the states. He was jailed for it.
Gabriella Holt brought up the nefarious vote taken during the budget debate that supposedly made the payments to the judges legal.
Senator Steinberg, who interestingly enough convened this committee with Assemblywoman Bass, introduced SB X 211, which approves supplemental pay and benefits of judges throughout the state, in direct contradiction to an appellate court decision, Sturgeon versus the County of Los Angeles, which made these payments illegal.
and it involved introducing an ex post facto law, which is against the California Constitution and the federal Constitution.
This SB 2X11 was passed on a weekend extraordinary session, and the only one I would blame is Senator Steinberg, who put it in there.
It was apparent that the attendees were disappointed by the meaningless committee hearing.
You gentlemen are basically, what you're telling us here today, those of us that didn't fall asleep, you're rearranging the chairs on the Titanic.
We spoke with Gabriella Holt, who is the president and CEO of the Citizens for California Reform, to get her reaction. She was unimpressed by this hearing that was supposed to be all about government reform.
They got up there and they said some really nice language: zero-based budgeting, performance-based budgeting, responsibility, changing the culture. You know, all those buzzwords that people say over and over and over. Oh, we're really going to get reform. We're going to get a balanced budget. They're going to do all these things. People don't know what that means.
She clearly and succinctly identified the problem.
And the fact of the matter is, those legislators don't listen to the people. They listen to themselves and they listen to their special interests. They're doing this whole reform because there's all these reform movements out there right now. And it's, you know, if they don't start talking about it on the inside, it's going to come from the outside. Well, little do they know it's coming from the outside anyway.
Well, I noticed that the chairman, Mike Fuhrer, tried to cut you off a couple of times. Do you feel that you had adequate time to say what you had to say?
Absolutely not. They had a dozen panelists. They had 90 minutes scheduled for their presentation. They took 2.5 hours. A dozen people. So about a dozen people lined up to speak, and they got 15 minutes. The public gets 15 minutes, and the dog and pony gets 2.5 hours. Last I saw, that the legislators and the staffers work for the people. We don't work for them. And frankly, it should have been the other way around. They should have done a succinct presentation and then opened it up to the public and allowed them to speak as long as they needed to speak. But what's interesting to me is generally when you have public hearings, you have it in a public place, you know, open to the public so anybody can come in. Coming into somewhere where it's very guarded and you know, very secured and very controlled, where the public just really doesn't have as easy as access to, is very interesting to me. Why they didn't hold it at City Hall, the County Board of Supervisors, you know, Hahn Building of Administration. We got lots of public buildings.
So in other words, you kind of think the reason they had it here at this private facility is to limit the amount of public participation?
I believe that to be true, yes. I believe that to be true. You're a public agency, you're having a public hearing.
She brings up an interesting point. There was little public notice, and as we found out, it was tightly controlled. Was the lack of audience attendance designed on purpose?
We have changes in administrations and leadership.
So in other words, you kind of think the reason they had it here at this private facility is to limit the amount of public participation?
I believe that to be true, yes. I believe that to be true. You're a public agency, you're having a public hearing, you know, where was the 72-hour notice, you know, for the public? I mean, where was the information? And where's the public access?
We asked her what she thought the legislators learned from the hearing. Looking at all the people that testified today, what do you think was the message that came out of the testimony from the public?
I think the primary concern of the people who testified was the judiciary system on a number of things. You know, the corruption in the courts, you know, questions on decisions and just who's overseeing the courts, and why is it that it seems that the courts are virtually left without any oversight or any way for people to come forward and express their concerns. That was an overwhelming sort of tenor of almost every person that spoke, I believe.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Please respond to our survey and leave your comments below. Number 1. Do you think that corruption in the judiciary is a major problem in California? Yes or no? Number 2. Do you think it's government bureaucracy that's the major problem in California? Yes or no? Or number 3. Is it the legislators and the elected officials that are the problem in California? Yes or no? Be sure to leave your comments below. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you an incredible video blog that challenges the legitimacy of the California courts. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, We want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. FullDisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and our video blog special 31. Dr. Richard I. Fine was incarcerated for accusing the Los Angeles Superior Court judges of taking illegal payments. While in jail, he filed a series of petitions and writs fighting to gain his freedom from an indefinite sentence of solitary coercive confinement. This next video blog shows how the court officials purposely manipulated court rules to deny Dr. Fine his freedom. Can a judge sit on a case where he has a personal interest in one of the parties before him? The U.S. House Judiciary Committee is planning a hearing on the federal recusal guidelines amid controversies that have swept through the state court systems in recent years. But what about when the judge is a defendant? It makes no sense anywhere in the rational world. But here in California, it's happened. And if once wasn't enough, it's happening again right now. Full Disclosure has been following the sorry saga of the incarceration of attorney Richard Fine, who has challenged California judges who have accepted illegal payments. He has filed numerous petitions, writs of habeas corpus, that he be let out of jail. His first appeal was denied by U.S. District Court Judge John Walter and Magistrate Judge Carla Worley. Marty Mason was the former office manager for Mr. Fine's law firm. She explained to Fred Sotilli on the set of Full Disclosure what Mr. Fine did in response to the denial of his writ.
So he filed an appeal with the Ninth Circuit Court. Judge Affey from the Superior Court answered that appeal and apparently made some false statements to the court and even cited to an order that doesn't even exist. And we know that because I pulled a copy of the docket and we've all looked at it. There's no such order listed anywhere on it, so it doesn't exist.
So Mr. Fine prepared a new petition with the district court showing the new evidence involving Judge Affey.
And he also named as parties to the petition the district court, specifically the same judges Walter and Worley, as respondents because they had refused to follow the statute, USC section 2243, and when they denied the first petition.
The statute USC 2243 that Marty references requires the court to act immediately by either releasing the petitioner or by denying the writ or to show cause. They did none of the above. And so Mr. Fine named both the judges as defendants in his appeal petition to the district court.
Fred took down those documents to file with the district court, and we were given the shock of the year on what level of deviousness they're willing to play with the case these days.
Fred Sotilli, a volunteer who files all of Mr. Fine's petitions with the court, described what Marty referred to as the shock of the year.
This started off to be a real easy job for a day. Simply go down and file these documents, and the people that work there in the pro se window in the federal building are really very nice, helpful people. So I went down and I brought these 4 documents, and I said, well, we're going to file these today. And they said, okay, no problem. And I said, I need to know who the judges are going to be, who you're going to assign these to. And they said, well, we're going to assign them to Judge Walter and Judge Carla Worley. And I said, well, you know, I felt kind of smug about it. I said, well, you can't do that. You see, they're the defendants. If you look on page 2, you see that, and the girl at that window, she looked on page 2 and says, oh, you're right. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Let me go talk to my supervisor.
The supervisor wasn't going to change court procedure to follow the law.
She talked to her for about 5 minutes, and then it was pretty heated looking, and she came out and took about 10 steps and then went back in and talked to her again. And finally she came out and she said, look, I know it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't seem right, but since it's a pro se filing, it has to be reviewed by Judge John Walter, and it will then be assigned to Magistrate Judge Carla Worley. I said, well, one of these documents says that we don't want a magistrate judge and this is our right and everything. And she says, well, I know, but this is our procedure, so we have to follow it. I'm just a clerk. And I said, okay, I appreciate that, but you do realize that I'll be back next week with motions to recuse those people, and everything, rightfully so. And she said, yes, procedurally, that's what you should do. Unfortunately, you'll have to do that, and we'll see you next week.
So the wheels of the court bureaucracy slowly turned, but they turned on Fred Sotilli and Mr. Fine.
Well, I came back the following week, and now there was a man at the window, and another really nice guy, and he's used to seeing me. Hi, how you doing? And I said, well, here's the recusals as promised, and he said, I'm familiar with the case, and just let me have those, and we'll take care of it right away. And he opened the computer, and he said, I don't believe it. He says, I can't file these. I said, well, you have to. He said, well, I can't. The case is closed. I said, wait a minute. I brought this last Friday. When was the case closed? He said, it was closed on Wednesday, the following Wednesday. I said, well, who did it? And he actually turned the computer around. He says, you see the signature? Judge John Walter.
Judge John Walter dismissed and closed the case in which he was named a defendant. How could this happen in any court in America?
I told Mr. Fine, and he said, well, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. He said, there's an FRCP rule. It's called Rule 60, and we'll have to invoke that in order to actually file those papers. A judge can't rule in a case where he's the defendant. This all started with Judge Yaffe doing this. He ruled in a case where he's the defendant. That's why Richard's in jail. And now these judges do the same thing, backing up Judge Yaffe by committing the same crime. I mean, anybody would see how unethical that would be to be the judge in your own case, and that's what he did. He did it. First Yaffe did it, then Walter and Worley did it, then they did it again. So now, this is where we are right now anyway. They just don't get it. They're obviously not stupid people. So what are they?
We asked longtime paralegal Marty Mason to give her opinion on the conduct of the Los Angeles Superior Court and this U.S. District Court judge.
Well, since it's such a no-brainer, such a simple issue that you cannot be a judge in a case in which you're a party, then I really even hate to use the word, but it is no exaggeration to say that this is just a bombshell of a cover-up. Judge Walter and Magistrate Judge Worley have gone way out on a limb to dismiss a case in which they are parties. Obviously, that is going to go up to the Ninth Circuit on appeal. The situation has just gotten so ridiculous. I keep wondering if the head judge of the entire district, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, won't just show up someday and bang some heads together, because it's ridiculous.
So Marty Mason indicates that this case, where the U.S. District Court Judge John Walter sat in judgment and dismissed a case against himself, may have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and Justice Kennedy. She suggests that there may not be a judge anywhere in California who will take the proper action.
As bad as it was, the situation with the under-the-table payments to the local judges, that is nothing compared to what is going on now. Now it's about whether we even still have a judicial system. And we certainly do not, if it is possible, for a judge to rule on a case that involves him personally.
Indeed, there is a question whether or not we've lost our judicial system. In 2007, and as recent as November 2009, the judges of the 2nd Appellate District of the state of California, all 31 of them, have recused themselves from the case of Sturgeon versus the County of Los Angeles, where Judicial Watch organization has been battling in court to stop the illegal payments being made to the judges. So when 31 justices of the Court of Appeals recognize the conflict and can no longer function in their official capacity, perhaps this substantiates that our judicial system is threatened. We would like to know what you, the viewers, think. Number 1. Do you think there's a possibility that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal will let stand Judge Walter's decision to dismiss a case where he was the defendant? Yes or no? Number 2, Do you think that a court administrator that assigns a case to a judge that is named as a defendant in the case should be prosecuted? Yes or no? Number 3, should judges who have been found to have a conflict of interest in a case and have refused to recuse themselves be prosecuted, punished and fined? Yes or no? Be sure to leave your comments below. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you. When we come back, we'll show you how the triangle of evil conspired to keep Dr. Fine in jail. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you. Weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and the last segment of our video blog special number 31. This next video blog shows the collusion between the County of Los Angeles, the high-dollar developers, and the Superior Court judges as they all work to protect and promote each other.
Richard Fine was interviewed by Full Disclosure the day before he was arrested for civil contempt of court. He knew what he was facing.
Tomorrow's case, or the case that we have now, is dealing with a dysfunctional system because of the fact that this is now pure politics and retaliation.
Richard Fine had committed the crime of accusing the Los Angeles Superior Court judges of taking illegal payments from the County of Los Angeles. Paul Orphanides went into the lion's den of the LA Superior Court to continue the battle on behalf of Judicial Watch.
And we're arguing here that these benefits are illegal under the California Constitution, and therefore this court should order the county to stop paying them. We're also saying that the recent legislation that was passed is a violation of the equal protection provision in the California Constitution because it treats judges in different counties differently for no good reason.
The legislation he's talking about was Senate Bill SBX 211. It was authored by the California Judicial Council and quietly ushered through the state legislature by Senate Speaker Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg last February. It was cleverly hidden in the budget bill and was passed at the urging of the Los Angeles Superior Court judges to assure that they wouldn't get into trouble for taking illegal payments from Los Angeles County.
They put into this bill an immunity from prosecution. Immunity from prosecution for what? And liability for what?
Richard Fine considers this a self-admission of guilt.
By legislation, and I repeat, by legislation, the California judicial system has been legislated to have been corrupt and to have committed illegal acts and to have been given immunity for the commission of those illegal acts.
Attorney Paul Orphanides explained the obvious logic of the situation.
The judges here are state officials. They're not county employees. They don't work for the court itself. The court is a creation of the state government. And the county has come in, and the county is trying to pay these state officials this supplemental compensation. If you think about all the the litigation that the county has pending in front of the court, any kind of lawsuit that's filed against the county is filed here and is considered here. So you effectively have a party to a lot of lawsuits that are going on in the court, coming in and paying the judges $46,000 a year extra. Now, certainly any other plaintiff couldn't do that without people's crying foul, talking about the appearance, the bad appearance that creates. And yet the county is doing that.
Full Disclosure pressed to find out where the source of the attack on Mr. Fine was originating.
Do you know it to be a fact that it was the developers' attorneys that pursued the contempt?
Oh, yes.
As a result of her determined investigation, Leslie discovered the source of Mr. Fine's persecution. Greedy developers had to get rid of Mr. Fine to protect their projects in Marina del Rey.
R.J. Comer and Joshua.
And who'd they work for?
And they worked for the Shores project.
And who owned the Shores?
And Epstein owned the Shores.
And the property is owned, the Shores is located on property. Who owns that property?
The people who own the property is the county, but it's leased to the Shores, to the Epsteins. So everything in Marina del Rey is owned by the county. They're supposed to protect it the way the national government is protecting Yosemite. But instead, they're breaking all the laws, ignoring the laws, and trying to make a Miami Beach out of it.
But there have been roadblocks. Every attempt by Full Disclosure to interview Mr. Fine while in jail has been denied by the sheriff, denying the First Amendment right to freedom of the press.
Victoria Kim from the Los Angeles Times was allowed to interview Mr. Fine. She wrote this article, which, with the limitations of the paper, gave a brief account of Mr. Fine's situation.
Well, we all know that mainstream media now is a tool of the government. There's not even a discussion point on that. We know that.
Armed with this information, we telephoned the sheriff and placed another request to interview Mr. Fine. The sheriff's spokesman, Whitmore, not only said no, but hell no.
Hi, Leslie. This is Steve Whitmore. I am unfortunately the bearer of bad news. The sheriff has repeatedly told me that that will not happen, and so your request has been denied. And he has not. I just talked to him yesterday about this, and he said it again. He said, no, that's not going to happen. So it's not going to happen, Leslie, and I'm sorry to have to deliver that to you.
Why isn't this important issue of judicial and county corruption being covered with the urgency it deserves? Sterling Norris underscores the terrible damage being done to the credibility of our justice system.
And to think that the parties that are involved in this are judges. I mean, you have to say, I know most of society likes to look at the judiciary as something that's probably the most highest integrity of any governmental agency, more than the legislature, more than the executive branch, and I think this goes just the opposite. Makes it very questionable.
Well, I'm here today to try to urge the judges and politicians and the people of Los Angeles to get attorney Richard I. Fine out of jail. He was put in there.
Find out about the enormity of this problem. Is there corruption in the judiciary? Is our court system threatened? Leslie Dutton has documented it all in the case of Richard I. Fine and the Judicial Watch legal battle to restore integrity to the courts. To watch previews of each program or to buy the full programs on DVD, go to fulldisclosure.net.
This concludes our video blog special. We're interested in what you, the viewers, think. If you would like to answer any of these questions posed by the video blogs, or if you'd like to make comments, please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us next time for another edition of Full Disclosure. Thank you.